You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode 382 of the fabulous Peltoncast, sponsored by our friends at Pagliacci Pizza. I'm your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
And we're coming to you in separate locations this week. I'm in Seattle, Washington, home of the four-time WNBA champion Storm.
And I'm coming to you from Renton, Washington, home of the Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks.
The Seahawks, who once again reclaimed the hammer.
There we go.
This podcast. Wow. It's going back and forth every week, and really it should be UW football, but spiritually the Seahawks.
But wait. It's the Daryl Jackson edition.
Indeed it is. The D-Jack episode. We have a lot to get to, including me attending both the UW football and Seahawks wins in the state of Michigan last weekend, as well as my pizza tour of the Midwest.
Okay.
But
you did go to like the two pizza places. You went to the two pizza cities outside of the East Coast in the country. Oh,
wow. St. Louis is so upset by this disrespect.
St. Louis?
Yeah, you don't know about St. Louis style pizza? That's a thing, isn't it? That's not like a made up thing like Spokane. Was it Salt Lake City or Spokane where they like made up and it had like fry sauce on it?
Okay.
It was just designed to troll people. I do not actually think St. Louis is on par with Detroit and Chicago as a pizza city. That was a joke. Let's start this week, though, with a return to our search for Seattle's best IPA, which this week has a leading contender that also may technically not be eligible. And that is from our friends at Cloudburst Brewing, the Cosmic Lust IPA, which you'll recall we discussed at length back when we had the Elysian Space Dust IPA, because Cosmic Lust is made by the brewers who created Space Dust before Elysian was sold to Anheuser-Busch InBev, and now are doing it at Cloudburst independently, but irregularly. It's been a while since Cosmic Lust was available. So as soon as I saw on Instagram that they had brewed a batch, I made sure to pick it up as a comparison. I don't know if this counts as like regularly available in our search for Seattle's best IPA, but it is the flagship, certainly, for Cloudburst. Their description: oh, what Dusty once was. He was vibrant. He was juicy. He was rough around the edges with a little bite, and yet still balanced and approachable. Everybody loved him, and even more do today. Sure, he still looks the same, but his old friends know that he's changed. He's bigger now, a little less interesting, dull and dumbed down. He says money and opportunity haven't changed him. Okay, but to those who remember what once was, this lust's for you.
Okay.
With Chinook, Citra, Amarillo, and Galaxy hops, and brewed in Seattle by an adamantly small, forever independent brewery that former Elysian employees work at.
Yes.
So there you go.
Adamantly small, forever independent. I love it.
The same could be said of the Peltoncast.
The same kind of could be said about the Peltoncast. Thank you. I was just talking this week about how we aggressively do not want the most famous guest possible on the podcast.
That's untrue. I don't know who the most famous guest who would come on the Peltoncast to be relevant to the Peltoncast is.
We've already had Sue Bird, and we called it a day, good sir. We were just like, done.
I'm just saying, like, if Pearl Jam was like, hey, can we come on the podcast? I'm not going to say no to that.
All of Pearl Jam? Just Pearl Jam? That's what you came up with the entire band?
I don't know.
If Jeff Ament wants to come on?
I mean, yeah, that's the most logical fit for the Seattle Sports Podcast. I agree. Ben Gibbard.
Well, we're aggressively small, adamantly small here on the Peltoncast.
Indeed, we are. But you know what isn't adamantly small this week? Our list of toasts.
Oh, yes.
Starting with congratulations to Michael Penix Jr., named National Offensive Player of the Week by the Walter Camp Foundation for his role in the Huskies, posting their second most yards ever in school history in the win at Michigan State. Penix, predictably also one of several Huskies honored by the Pac-12. He was Offensive Player of the Week. Zion Tupuola-Fatui was Defensive Lineman of the Week after forcing a fumble that was not called a fumble.
That was really strange.
Very strange.
Can we just pause for 1 second on that, because it didn't matter to the game. I had an inkling. I was like, I don't know if this is gonna matter. Could the Huskies have challenged that play and just decided not to?
They could have. I don't think it would have done much good, because as always in college football, the same person who decides whether to stop the play to review it also determines whether the call is correct. They are both judge and jury in that sense.
But
so the challenging almost never makes sense.
Most obvious fumble in a situation like that.
And usually what you do instead of challenge is you take a timeout to give them more time to look at it. And Michigan State took the timeout, and they still didn't want to stop playing. It truly baffling.
That was very strange. I still think the Huskies should have done it just to be like I understand what you're saying about the same person is looking at it who would have also reviewed it, but just to really rub the point home at the very least.
Apparently it was Pac-12 refs working the game.
Yes. And apparently the Pac-12 should die. Oh God, what happened?
The next time the Huskies visit Michigan State, it will be Big Ten refs working it. So that's good news.
Pac-12 refs really showed us why.
They always every week in and week out. You can count on that. Lastly, center Parker Brailsford was freshman of the week.
There we go. The broadcasters. So you were at this game. You didn't hear this on Peacock, but the broadcasters had not figured out the nickname. Is that
how you pronounce it?
No, that's how I just pronounced it right now. I was looking at there's a tweet that somebody shares with the ratings after each week, and I always am like, where are the Huskies? Colorado's always number one, and of course they were not on there because they were on Peacock in a game that was much better than almost any other game around the country last weekend.
Well, it was better on paper. I don't know if it actually was better.
The matchup was better. Yes. There were not that many premier matchups around college football.
Next up, congrats to Mariners pitchers who set a franchise record with their 16th shutout of the season Monday in Oakland.
Somehow, while not pitching well the entire season, they set a franchise record for shutouts.
Just sticking by this stick, just stubbornly clinging to this stick.
That was for old time's sake. That was a sub 500 Mariners take.
Thanks to Fabulous Pelton quotes for the heads up. A belated congrats are in order for the Peltoncast WNBA Fantasy Champions Between Two Birds, co-managed by Neil Rhodes and Aubrey Robertson. All right, lastly this week, congrats to former Storm forward and Peltoncast favorite Alicia Clark on winning 6th Player of the Year for the Las Vegas Aces.
Wow, congrats.
Nothing.
Congrats on winning 6th Player of the Year with the Aces. Come on. That's like congrats to Puka Nacua for the most receptions. Like, who are we celebrating right now?
I mean,
congrats, Puka Nacua. You transferred from UW and ended up at our most hated rival, but you're playing well there. Isn't that good? Come on.
I mean, he didn't transfer from UW to the Rams. The Seahawks had every opportunity to draft Puka Nacua if they so chosen.
Alicia Clark chose to leave the Storm and sign with the Aces. Is that correct?
I mean, she signed with Washington in between.
Okay. Well, good for her.
So.
Well, congrats. Congrats on the award.
The most bitter toast that we've seen yet on the podcast.
What are we it's a little too friendly there.
Okay.
For a Seattle sports podcast. We still have to. I'm the only person who's carrying the water for the Storm at this point. I feel like I'm the only person cheering for the team to lose.
Yeah. All right, should we get into talking about this trip?
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
As we were waiting to get in on Sunday in Detroit to the Seahawks-Lions game, some of the Lions fans were musing about the number of Seahawks fans who were there, which really was way less than Seahawks-Colts, the other road game I've attended.
They were musing as if there were a lot.
Yeah, they viewed it as a lot of Seahawks fans. And then they were talking about, well, it's the ultimate sports fans weekend to be able to go see the Huskies play and then the Seahawks. And I was like, actually, it's like, it's a solid A- behind the A that was the Huskies playing at Michigan and the Seahawks playing at the Colts 2 years ago.
Wow.
Which also was topped as
Michigan State is also the kid brother to Michigan in terms of weekends for travel.
Yep, 100%.
Wow.
And the Cubs weren't at home, so I didn't get to tag that on the Friday as I did last year. or in 2021. So,
but most importantly, the outcomes for this weekend that you took were much better. So, what are we going to talk first? Food, or are we going to talk sports first?
let's talk sports first, then we'll get to
Okay.
food.
Okay. So you're in East Lansing, Michigan?
Boy, that was a long pause, but we got there. We got there. The
No.
geography.
I knew it. I was
Okay.
building up the drama or whatever. We're recording over Zoom, so I have to have at least one awkward pause there. You're in East Lansing, Michigan. Did you tailgate for this? What is the environment like there?
So, I mean, it was a little strange, obviously, given the events that are going on. Michigan State, it was reported on Monday, has notified Mel Tucker that they intend to fire him for cause after the Title IX report that we discussed on the podcast, or complaint that we discussed on the podcast last weekend. So, certainly Michigan State fans were still excited about the game. We wandered past, apparently there's like a traditional 4:00 shot, which it said like 4:00 specifically. There's a lot of games that start before 4:00. I don't know what they do with the shot at that point, or you're playing the game at 4:00, but they were rallying behind, being 16.5-point underdogs going into this game, and how Michigan State was still going to win. There wasn't like a lot of trash talk from Michigan State fans because there was only so confident they could be going into this game. We did not tailgate, didn't know anyone who was, and got there fairly late, maybe an hour and a half before the game. So after we parked on campus, we walked over to see the Breslin Center, home of Michigan State men's basketball. There's a Magic Johnson statue out front, some plaques commemorating their men's and women's basketball teams that have won the conference. And it was interesting to me how few of those there are recently, because Michigan State only is good in the month of March now under Tom Izzo. As we were walking over there, we did not have any beer. And two Utah fans, of all people, walk by us and unsolicited hand us each Founders All Day IPAs.
Wow.
Just out of Pac-12 solidarity.
I really, for now.
Yeah.
I love that. Utah fans. This is the thing.
Very lost Utah fans.
This is a Chris Smith complaint about people who wear jerseys to a Seahawks game. Somebody will show up week 1. There's like a family all wearing Dolphins jerseys or whatever.
Very
and
strange.
It's just like, why are you here? But also, why did you wear those? Like, just to be like, hey, everybody, I'm not cheering for either of these teams. I just want to let you know publicly, I don't care about either of these teams who are playing. I cheer for a football team. They're not here.
Full page ad. I don't cheer for these teams.
Like the Utah fans, they're just like, because I'm assuming they were decked out in Utah gear or whatever.
I mean, that's how I know they were Utah fans. It's not like they
exactly.
I mean, they didn't tell us, but I was aware previously, and we were just like passing each other as we were walking. It wasn't like we walked up to them and had a conversation. Yeah,
I love it.
It was a great moment. It worked out perfectly.
Yeah. Quite a run in the Pac-12 for Utah fans. You've got the conference championships, beating USC, the loss to UW, of course, the Byron Murphy pick, and then their fans handing you those beers walking by.
That will go down in the Pac-12 Mount Rushmore for Utah without question. So got into Spartan Stadium a little early. It feels a lot, I would say, like Husky Stadium pre-renovations. It was back to, for the first time in a while, peeing in a trough at a college football game.
Yeah, you got a little trough action.
Colorado has that same experience as well. That's one of the other road trips I've taken in the Pac-12. All bleachers, no backs to the bleachers. You're crammed in there pretty tight. Reminded me kind of the Rose Bowl to that extent. The crowd was good. There was some empty seats, but the student section was just packed like well before game time. Like, respect to the Michigan State students on showing up early for this one. And it felt like it could be at kickoff. It felt like could be a pretty good, exciting atmosphere. And then the game started.
But do you think that's something, so vis-a-vis Washington, about where the student body comes from? Partially it's just the timing of it, right? Like, they've been in school for over a month at Michigan State, I would assume.
Correct.
But so there's just a
month,
timing issue for UW fans. Obviously, you're an actual Big Ten country. You left Big Ten country to go to Big Ten country. You're in historic Big Ten country.
Well, what I posted on Instagram is that I was deep in Big Ten
Okay.
country.
Yeah.
And someone objected to that I was already deep in Big Ten country when I left. And I would say that we're not deep in we are in Big Ten country, but when you get to Michigan, you're deep in it.
And then also, I again, this is literally knowing nothing about the institution, but I think I can make a broad statement about it.
Oh, of course you can.
But the students at Michigan State, it probably is a little bit more representative of the actual community in Michigan than UW is.
It seems plausible because of the fact that there was one billboard we saw at one point or something advertising that I forget what the exact number is, but like X percentage of Michigan State grads are employed in Michigan after graduation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's interesting. Was that necessarily the goal? Like, is it a bad thing if you get employed in some other state? But that does seem to speak towards 77% apparently are in state, according to whatever was the first thing that popped up on
the billboard. 77% of students who go to Michigan State are from the state of Michigan, not employed within the state of Michigan.
No, the billboard said that. This is a different stat I'm seeing on Google, to be clear.
Okay. Nobody could be employed by the state of Michigan because of the Mel Tucker contract, unfortunately. But I do that's my expectation. The other thing, there was an ad for I think it was Michigan State on the Peacock broadcast about what a great research institution it is. And it's just like, we get it, right? Like, you don't need to promote to us, the people who are watching this game as Michigan State fans and UW fans, about being a research institution. It's like a fucking competition in the Big Ten and schools like this to be the most research of all of the research institutions. And research literally means nothing. It is the most, like, what are you researching? You could be researching anything. It is the most broad term that could possibly be used. It's just research institution. It's like, great. That's really relevant information.
Look forward to Jimmer weighing in on this one.
There are many research institutions in the country.
There sure are.
It's all about who can out-research the most, who can be the most research of all the research institutions.
There are many football institutions in the country too, and some of them are out footballing others. One of the things that did stand out from Michigan State pregame is like they were getting ready to play their fight song, and they referred to it as the best fight song in the country. It's like, guys, objectively speaking, as a neutral observer here, the best one is like right up the road in Ann Arbor. Like, that would be like,
they're not going to admit that at Michigan State,
but still, that would be like Washington State talking about how they have the greatest setting in college football,
or UW being like, we've got the best cheese.
Yeah,
in college football.
Like, that's overcompensating too far.
The best. I literally have no idea what Michigan State's fight song is.
A lot of people saying it. I got to give them credit. It was.
Well, yeah, 77% of the graduates are from Michigan. They know it. A lot of people sang it.
So, anyways, then the game started and the vibe quickly began to sour. I feel like Michigan State. My sense about the Michigan State crowd is it was a little bit like UW in probably much of the Steve Sarkisian era, where it was like, we're expecting something to go wrong and we're ready for something to go wrong when it does, which is funny because like Michigan State's success is not that far away. They won a New Year's Six bowl game 2 seasons ago. So, but things have obviously turned rather dark since then, both on and off the field. By halftime, the crowd had thinned considerably. The student section, like large swaths of it, were completely empty. And by the end of the game, it was like largely Husky fans who were left in the building.
Nice.
It reminded me.
The game was over for so long.
So long. Zero darkness was seen.
I felt like just a twinge of darkness right before kickoff. So
true. Like there was still nervousness, but no actual darkness, except yeah, I mean, I guess like maybe when that fumble wasn't called or something, it's like, oh, this is gonna come back to haunt us. But
they punted and I was like, cool, yeah, game's over.
Michigan State was trying to play like the field position game under their interim head coach. and one of my strong takes is you are not going to win a field position game against this UW offense. Confidently could say that.
I mean, so are we talking about the game in general right now?
Yeah.
it was interesting. I think the Michigan State team, I don't know if they're better or worse than they were last year. UW dominated the game last year, but it was close.
UW controlled the game. They did not dominate.
I think that it was early in the season. They hadn't quite figured out the offense yet. And they obviously have the offense the most figured out right now. This was a complete and utter dismantling of a team. Like, if you would have told me, not knowing the logos, not knowing how great the fight song is or whatever, how many students from in-state went there, that they're a research institution, the most research of all institutions. If you would have told me that that was Tulsa, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. On the field, they were not a Power 5 school against UW. And I think you have to give UW a lot of credit for that. Like, obviously, the situation, Mel Tucker and the situation around Mel Tucker is not worth that many points, is not worth the...
It just can't be.
Exactly. The players are still trying to win. You know, it doesn't really ultimately matter, like, who the coach is, who's making these decisions. The players are trying to execute the plays. The plays are basically the same. And it was such a complete and utter domination that it was hard for me not to think that UW is possibly the best team in the country.
In terms of FPI efficiency, based only on results from this season, UW is currently number 2 in the country.
After
Oklahoma, who throttled Tulsa much worse than UW did the week before. Do you care to guess which conference number 3, 4, and 5 in the country hail from?
All from the Pac-12, of course.
The Pacific 12 Conference, of course. 3 of the top 5 in the country in FPI efficiency through 3 weeks are from the Pacific Northwest.
It's
USC, Oregon, and Oregon State are the other 3. Washington State, which ranks a strong 16th in the country in FPI efficiency, a distant last among the Northwest schools.
I think there's a good chance that UW could have their best team since the best team of going as far back to Don James. I think there is a chance that this could be the best team that they have, and they still could not win the Pac-12. I think there's a good chance that they play in a bowl game that is much worse than bowl games that they played in under Chris Peterson, while having a team that is probably better. Again, it's only been 3 games. I was going to say the team's healthy, but the team is even that healthy.
They're
like
not
the
that
way
healthy.
That
we'll talk more about
played,
that later.
The secondary played in that game. They're still figuring it out, but if the defense is even to above average with where this offense is, they're a clear competitor for the Pac-12, and in any other season would comfortably win the Pac-12. And it's one of those things where you look at the schedule and it is just, there's a couple in a row where you're like, that's okay. And then it is a fucking gauntlet week after week after week of games against teams that are just absolutely dominating so far.
Again, the Huskies are playing those 3 other teams that are in the top 5 in FPI efficiency. I think in a 4-week stretch, it's certainly in a very short period of time.
Have you looked at the Seahawks stretch that starts in like November?
I think we talked about it while you were not on the podcast.
That is there.
I guess there is some separation between Oregon and then the USC, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State stretch, but still not great. I mean, this kind of leads me to my biggest takeaway from this game, which is just, I agree with you that the success that UW is having this season will benefit them in future seasons, and that we don't need to obsess about what the roster looks like next year, because this is college sports in 2023, and the roster is going to be volatile from season to season. But all that being said, Penix coming back, Odunze coming back, McMillan coming back, Troy Fautanu coming back, Braylon Trice coming back, etc., ZTF coming back, so on and so forth. Like, we need to enjoy and cherish this season, because it might not ever get any better than this again.
Yeah.
And it's certainly going to be hard for it to be more fun than this offensively. The ease with which they move the ball. Like, there was the possession where they get backed up on their own 1-yard line. And it's just like, oh, cool. We're just going to max protect, let Penix drop back, and throw like a 50-yard bomb to Odunze that he's going to catch with a defender draped all over him. And it's not even going to be a big deal at all.
It's kind of wild how easily they had deep passes. I was thinking about you being there, just being like, well, okay.
It's just, yeah,
right?
It was truly.
That's kind of all you could do, is just be like, damn, I guess that's what's happening today.
My friend Todd, who graciously drove me to Michigan and back, went to go get a beer when the Huskies got pinned deep, and he was like, wait, how did they get the ball? How did they score that quickly? I think he came back after they had already scored a touchdown, or maybe they had already moved it to like the 30 and there was some sort of a stoppage in play. It was like, yeah, that's just what they do now.
Yeah,
it's great.
No, it's pretty incredible. I mean, again, they were so good that you kind of have to ask yourself, is Michigan State just truly awful? Which it seems pretty surprising. It would be very surprising to me if Michigan State was that bad. This is a team that
I think it's plausible that their quarterback play could be that bad. And Noah Kim was 12 of 31 for 136 yards.
It
but
doesn't
yeah,
matter
the
about
defense
the
is
quarterback
different.
play.
Yeah.
The Husky offense, if they really wanted to, obviously they throttled down a little bit at various points. They probably could have scored a touchdown on basically every single possession in the game.
I mean, also like the last possession of the half, where I don't know how much time was left on the clock when they took it over, but just quickly marched down the field, score the touchdown with 7 seconds left to make it 35-0 with getting the ball to start the second half.
It was pretty wild. Like that is a game that we are going to remember because of just playing a team like that and the complete domination of them.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, we'd probably remember it more if we weren't joining the Big Ten, because it would be more unique. Because now we'll just play Michigan State semi-often.
We'll travel there presumably every 4 years, more or less. Yeah.
But it is a situation that going into the Big Ten and the conversation, look, they're not Ohio State, they're not Michigan, they're not Penn State. But
I mean, one of the things is, we had the podcast 2 years ago when I came back from Michigan, and I talked about like the levels to this shit and the way that they were on such another level at Michigan as compared to UW. Let me tell you, I did not get that sense on Saturday.
About Michigan State? Yeah.
I did
not. You happen to see the worst Husky team of...
But it wasn't even necessarily about the game. It was also about, as I mentioned, like if you go back and listen to that one, like they show the list of graduates and it's like Gerald Ford and so on and so forth. And the fact that there's 100,000 people in the stadium and that all of them are there early and standing and excited the entire game. And that, it does mean more in the same way as the SEC at Michigan. It means a lot at Michigan State, but not more than at UW.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
well, yeah,
I was fully prepared for another 1-1 weekend. In 2021, like the timing of it worked out because the frustrating, disappointing game was on Saturday, and then the Seahawks came out and looked awesome against the Colts, and that was kind of the lingering memory of the trip. So I was like very careful to like set my expectations low going into Seahawks Lions on Sunday, because I wanted to make sure that it still was seen as a successful weekend thanks to UW, whatever happened in Seahawks Lions. Let me tell you one thing about the Lions fans. They could not possibly have been more excited for this game. And I definitely, like, back in the back of my mind had the thought, like, oh man, if the Seahawks ruined this for the Lions fans, like they I mentioned the statue, the Lions on Saturday unveiled a statue of Barry Sanders outside the stadium, which we passed as we entered.
We know your feelings about statues.
I don't generally believe in them, but Barry Sanders also has like the postseason track record of the 95 Mariners. So it's fitting.
Did he play in a playoff game?
He played in playoff games. He did not win. His teams did not win a playoff game during his career. Obviously not Barry Sanders' fault, to be clear.
Something that he has in common with the Mariners. They're building statues over players who never won a playoff game. Detroit.
I didn't realize
this is the team that thought they were going to win.
Yes.
They could not see anything bad happening.
They honored him throughout the game. Kelvin Johnson, who apparently, I think Bob Cantona tweeted this, had a strained relationship with the organization, was featured several times, had a video message for Barry Sanders. Peyton Manning, by the way, stole the show with his video message for Barry Sanders.
Really?
A very random combo, but Peyton Manning always funny. So he nailed it. He got the hammer, I think, on that.
Did he? I mean, Peyton Manning's kind of great.
Yeah. So the start of the game, the energy in that building. I mean, even in the Seahawks heyday, I'm not sure I've seen as much excitement as there was in that building, or heard a stadium is loud taking advantage of the dome. Like, there's the same thing in terms of they're taking pride in false starts. That's a funny way to put it, because the term for the fans, their version of 12s is one pride. So that's it's the one pride list of number of false starts and times delay of games and times teams have to take time out. So that opening drive, I mean, the noise, the energy, all of it was off the charts. And the Seahawks calmly marched down and scored a touchdown. And then the Lions very quickly come back and score a touchdown. And it felt a lot at that point like it was going to be a repeat of last year's game where the Lions scored 45 points and lost. It was a little more defensive than that. And obviously the crowd didn't stay that energized the entire time. But a truly remarkable performance by the Seahawks, I think, to handle that environment and play the way they did. And my number one takeaway from that game, God damn it, Pete Carroll did it. In the second quarter, I was ready to fire Pete. He comes out, takes a timeout to avoid a delay of game on 4th and 3, and then decides to was that when they kicked the field goal and missed? I forget exactly what the sequence of events, but don't go for it. The defense, his baby, is just getting picked apart by Jared Goff, who started 11 of 12 completing passes in this one. And it's like, what is it you do here, Pete Carroll? You're just in charge of the vibes. That's all you're bringing to the table, because you're not bringing defense. You're not bringing in-game decisions. But damned if the Seahawks didn't eventually make enough plays defensively in a very Seahawksy way and show resilience and stay competitive. Now, it turns out that you've got to amend the can you win the game in the fourth quarter? Because now you have to add, can you win the game in overtime? Because they didn't win the game in the fourth quarter. They could have, didn't, but they sure did win the game in the overtime.
Yeah. Wow. Pete Carroll did it. That's your take. So I think there are a couple things that Pete Carroll things that were different than maybe you would have peak bad era Pete Carroll, near the end of the Russ era.
And we should be clear, more frustrating era Pete Carroll than probably actually bad Pete Carroll. But yes,
he did a few things differently. And if you'll notice, I believe on the game-winning touchdown drive in overtime, there was one run on the entire drive.
That sounds plausible.
They passed the damn ball to get downfield. This wasn't a pound the rock,
There were 2 runs on that drive.
2 yards and a cloud of dust or whatever. Kenneth Walker wasn't running the ball particularly well in this game, and they moved away from the run relatively early. I mean, he only got to 17 carries. I don't know. I didn't see the situational stats for how much they ran the ball, but
they have moved up in terms of passing over expectations in the Ben Baldwin charts.
They've gotten in the positive direction.
Yeah, from week 1 to week 2.
So they threw the ball 41 times, rushed in the end 25, but that includes a handful of Geno Smith scrambles. They weren't just we're going to pound the rock against this team. They came out with a much better game plan than they had against the Rams.
Which I kind of thought was not actually a bad idea coming into this game, with the success that they had running in the games. Jake Curran had started at right tackle last season, with Curran and Stone Forsythe starting at tackles against a pretty fearsome Detroit pass rush. And not only did the Seahawks pass the ball, they protected Geno Smith. He was awesome in the pocket, stepping up, finding space, making plays, with one very notable exception, the one time he was sacked and nearly it felt like cost the game in the moment. But all of that was terrific.
Geno was awesome in this game. I mean, Geno played such an incredible game, and it felt so different than last week, where for me going into it, I was like, you never know how much you're going to care. This is near the Peltoncast
Golden
motto
rule.
or whatever. What is it?
Peltoncast golden rule.
The Peltoncast golden rule, that you don't know how you're going to react in a situation until you experience that situation. I guess it is the Peltoncast golden rule, right? I was like, maybe I just don't care that much about the Seahawks. Like, the Huskies won. I was like, the Huskies are so dominant, maybe the most dominant that I've ever seen them in my entire life. Maybe I just don't care about the Seahawks. And we got to the second half of that game. I had to go to Mateo's football game, got a receiving touchdown. He got catch in the game. There are various quarterbacks. Quarterbacks in general were 1 for 1 with a touchdown in his first grade football game. So that was pretty cool. But so I was there for the first half watching on my phone, just being like, what the hell is going on? Without watching the game, I'm like, the Seahawks score a touchdown. Great. I was listening to that on the way in. They're just giving up touchdowns instantly. It felt like coming back. I'm like getting notifications. Reek Woolen's hurt. DK Metcalf is hurt. And I'm just like, this is a train wreck.
Seeing them walk off the field and we were in the corner on the side of both the Seahawks end zone, end to which they had to walk to the locker room. So it was like walking in front of us, basically, Woolen and Metcalf, as they went to the locker room.
But goddamn, if the second half didn't start and I was not up screaming about various different things, the turnover to begin the half,
interference. Or I'm sorry, the intentional grounding.
Intentional grounding, yes. I was screaming at nobody at that point. I was just like arguing with fake officials. Like when you get down into it, right? The Peltoncast golden rule, when you get there, I was like, this is the team that I care about the most. It is not even comparable. Husky football, Storm draft pick, Mariners in the playoffs. I just do not care at the level that I care about the Seahawks team. And being in that moment and excited for that game, it was unlike anything else. So for me, it was like, okay, I actually do, because I was like, maybe they'll just be bad. I'll be fine with that. I would not have been fine with that. I learned.
Yes, again, Peltoncast golden rule. How terrified were you that they were going to lose the game on the final drive of regulation?
Oh, I mean, there was one completion where I was like, thank God they completed a pass over the middle. It was like a 6-yard completion. I think Bobby made the tackle.
Yeah,
and
Detroit
I was
got
like,
very conservative after.
I think they called it bad. I think the play calling was not good on that drive. I think they could have scored a touchdown. If
they had 12 and 11-yard completions, and then they let the clock run way down to 38 seconds, didn't take a timeout at that situation with 3 remaining, and then 4-yard completion, incomplete, 3-yard completion, kick a field goal on 4th and 3.
There was some point where you start realizing, okay, they're not going to win this game here. And I was like, thank God that's not going to happen.
It literally did not occur to me until they let the clock run down on 4th down.
When the Seahawks didn't call a timeout before that, I just don't see the reason to not. I guess if you're just so comfortable, you're like, because the Lions would have been out of timeouts. There's not a way that they could have gotten the ball back. If they missed the field goal, it's not like they could have gotten the ball back after that. You just take a knee and it's over.
Yes, they would have had 1 timeout, but not enough to get the ball back.
So I didn't see how there was any downside to taking a timeout.
Well, the downside is then you convince them to go for it, and then they try to score a touchdown.
I don't think there was any chance of them going for it there.
I suppose not, based on the way they played it. I don't know. That entire drive, the possibility of overtime was not even anywhere in my mind. I've been watching too much of the quarterback series on Netflix, which I am obviously late to. And I was thinking of Patrick Mahomes constantly going around to his teammates in late game situations, telling them, be ready to score here, assuming that the defense is going to, score because you just need to be prepared for that scenario. That's what I was thinking, is like, could the Seahawks manage to get a field goal to tie this game after the Lions scored the go-ahead touchdown? That was the only thing I considered that entire time.
I was pretty convinced that we were going to lose the game after the Lions came back. When Geno got sacked, I was just like, oh yeah, they're going to lose. Like, it's going to be really, really frustrating. We're going to go back and be like, we were up 10. The moment after the Trey Brown pick happened, the pick 6 happened, that was when I was the most stressed. I was very happy about the pick 6, but because I let myself start thinking, oh, we're actually going to win this game.
Exactly.
And I was like, that's
the most dangerous scenario possible.
The second you think to yourself that the team is going to win, that's how you know you're going to lose. And
hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane.
I started thinking that after the pick six, I was like, holy shit, we're actually going to win this game. And I knew that we were not going to win the game because I thought that we were going to win the game, ironically, I suppose. But I thought that we were going to get the ball first or something in overtime, get 2 first downs, punt, and then they would come down and hit a field goal. They were just almost every scenario outside of the scenario that played out seemed more likely than the actual scenario that happened. The Seahawks getting the ball and marching down and scoring a touchdown there did not, even up to the point that they were at like in the red zone inside the 10-yard line. I still thought we were going to kick a field goal. It wasn't until Tyler Lockett, until the ball hit the pylon, that I was like, oh shit.
It wasn't until the ball hit the pylon. It was in, I don't know how this played out on the broadcast. It wasn't until the referee said the game is over, or the call stands or whatever.
I wasn't worried about it being a fumble because I could see that it wasn't. I was worried that he might have been down at the 1 or something.
An interesting counterfactual: if the Seahawks had incompleted there on 3rd and 2 at the Detroit 6, whether they would have gone for it or not.
I think they probably would have. I was thinking about that as well, because if you give them the ball back, it's a death sentence, and you're so close that a field goal just, I feel like your best case scenario there with the Lions going for every single 4th down is a tie.
Right. Yeah, having to stop them on repeated 4th down. Although the Seahawks 4th down defense in this game was quite outstanding. A pair of Devin Witherspoon plays to one of them, kind of getting tangled up with the receiver, but one other great play on 4th down that was maybe the highlights of his day. The other thing I will tell you here is saying nothing about Detroit specifically, but just about the level of excitement of the fans and the sheer volume of them relative to Seahawks fans, although we had a few Seahawks fans around us. My celebration in this game was as muted as it could possibly have been, to the point that I think the Lions fans in front of us were making fun of my golf clapping. I mean, that might be like
a fucking Stanford fan over here.
Narcissism. It's like, this is not how I act if I'm at a Seahawks home game in that rare situation, because I've been to more Seahawks road games in the last 3 years now than Seahawks home games. But this is very much me being cognizant of being wildly outnumbered and just being careful.
Yeah, no, I think that is a wise decision, because I've seen many fights at Seahawks games from people who are not careful, and you don't want to be sweaty and escorted out. Like, that is just not a situation. Not that you would escalate any situation, but like the sweaty escorted out of the stands because you're fighting, that's like you've reached a real low in life.
I also, have you ever attended a Seahawks or Huskies road game? Like,
ever?
Yeah.
I've been to Husky road.
Oh,
games.
That's right. UW at Oregon. Yes, of course, that one.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Like, some people enjoy kind of the back and forth with the other team's fans. That is not your boy. I want no part of it. I just want to be left alone and leave everyone else alone.
Oh, no, it feels like conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah, the number one thing to avoid in all of life.
We are the most opposite of the bear version of Italian family.
I'm for clear communication. And if you have to, I am so comfortable communicating something that is hard to communicate, but not conflict. Does that make sense? The difference?
Yes. I feel like it wasn't until we were in the car headed back to Chicago, which was well after this game, because the post-game traffic in Detroit is real and it's spectacular, that I like really felt comfortable.
Ironically, Detroit of all places couldn't figure out car traffic.
Yeah. That I really felt comfortable celebrating. Oh my God, I can't believe they actually won this game.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely I was riding high all day. It was funny because it's the Lions. They were excited. They were right to be excited. They just beaten the world champion Chiefs. They had such a good end to their last season.
The statistical projections said they would be very good. Like, all indications were that the Lions would be good.
And I still think the Lions are a good team.
Look, the fact that they lost this game isn't necessarily that big of a deal. Like, the other thing about it being a very Pete Carroll game, the difference in yards per play, I think, ended up being like less than a yard per play at the end. But for large swaths of this game, there was like a 1.5 yard per play difference between the two teams. And the Seahawks won this game almost exclusively because of the fact that the Lions had officially 3 turnovers. One was the Amon-Ra St. Brown fumble on the last play of the first half that was meaningless, but 2 legitimate turnovers, and the Seahawks had none. That was the game.
I mean, that's what it's about. That's the entire defense.
It's all about the ball.
That is what the defense is based off of. You give up yardage and you hope to get turnovers. You just assume if there are enough plays, at some point somebody's going to do something wrong. And I think there's probably, I hadn't thought about this. That may have been more true. I don't know are there less turnovers now than there used to be? There must be.
There's fewer interceptions for sure. So I don't think fumbles have gone up enough to compensate for that.
I think that might be one of the biggest flaws with the Pete Carroll. Just offenses are better than they used to be. And so having a defense that's based off of give the offense something, let them do something over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But
by the way, the total on this game, because I just happened to see this on the Pro Football Reference page, was 47. And I don't know. I'm not a gambler, but I would have smashed the over on that one.
47?
47. These teams
between
combined
the Seahawks and the Lions.
These teams, I believe, combined for 93 points last season in their game. So
that is really, I mean, but the reason it wasn't a Pete Carroll game of late was the Lions didn't, as far as I know, I don't have the stats up. They didn't dominate time of possession.
They did not. That is true because they were the team that scored quickly repeatedly in this game. The Seahawks won the time of possession, although strictly because of the extra possession in OT.
It's still, that's something that doesn't happen that often.
Yes.
I mean, so that means that in regulation, the Lions had 30 minutes and 48 seconds. They were almost exactly even in regulation.
Yeah, they ran 62 plays. The Seahawks ran 68, and I think like 9 of them, I think, were in overtime. So it was like 62-59.
Yeah, it was almost precisely even as far as time of possession. No, I mean, it was a monster victory, and especially looking, like I mentioned, the schedule that they have ahead of them.
Oh, yeah.
They need every win very, very badly. And, last week's would have been really, really nice to be 2-0 right now. But I think we'll talk about the Seahawks versus the Panthers or whatever later. But I do think this game has to give you a bit of a reframing from the previous week. We don't need every week to be an indictment of what the team is. This doesn't have to be the Mariners earlier in the season. But but I think you can understand why the Lions fans felt the way that they felt about the Lions, right? They'd just been the world champions.
Yeah. They'd
finished last season really well. On paper, the team looked good. The statistical projections were good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a very big victory.
It is. Should we talk about pizza?
Absolutely, we should. Finally get to something we want to talk about.
So somehow I had, it's interesting. This was my first trip to Chicago since the Bear. The last time I went was like May 2022. So it was right before the Bear came out. And I expected it to be a much more Italian beef heavy trip. And I did try a new location.
You can control that. It's not like people are coming down the streets. I thought people like the Utah fans would walk by and hand me Italian beef.
I did try Buona's, which is a new Italian. It's not a new Italian beef chain. It was new to me, having previously done Portillo's and Al's beef. I forget.
Famous, yeah.
Yeah. Al's was my choice of those two. Buona, what they introduced to me was in addition to the option to have your Italian beef dunked or dipped.
Oh, yeah.
They offer the baptized option, which is like, let's just let it marinate in those juices for a period of time until, I know your feelings about wet bread. This is
does
literally
the bread get
wet
really
bread.
soggy.
That's what I want. So I liked that option.
I mean, if you have it fresh, that's pretty soggy though. It's a long time in there.
I mean, I don't know how long it's actually spending in there. It was wetter, I think, than previous Italian beefs that I've had. It also, speaking to my newfound familiarity with Italian beef, I don't think I had giardiniera at Portillo's or Al's Famous previously, and I
you
did.
Said
this
no
time.
To the giardiniera? Or do you have to order it separately?
I'm not sure. It was like an option here, like you had to add it on, and I did.
Absolutely, you did.
So it was quite delicious. Italian beef is good, but the pizza tour started, oddly, at T-Mobile Park on Wednesday.
Wow. Okay.
With third Pelton brother Zach Jabal, as I arrived early for the matinee game, and Zach met me up on the 300 level, and we got Moto pizza for the first time that I've had Moto, which they describe on their website. Let me go back here, as a delightfully odd mix of Detroit, New York, Roman, and Filipino goodness. But I think is most categorized, if you're going to categorize it, is a Detroit style pizza.
It's called Moto Pizza. Like,
Oh, I never even put that together.
really?
No, I never did.
We know who it's after. You could talk about all the other things, but it's called Moto Pizza.
It's square. Yeah, I mean, and it's got, but it doesn't necessarily have the sauce fully on the top. Some of these pies do, but not all of them do. So I got you the pepperoni. I had the kissed, which is pepperoni, spicy sausage, and hot and spicy honey, basically hot honey. And these are like not cheap, but it's $19.
You're trying to guilt me into not paying you for it.
It's fine.
You waited till the podcast to bring it up.
I just want to note that, like, there was a person in line in front of me who didn't really know what was going on. Like, the rest of us were there because it was Moto Pizza.
You were all nerds going over there.
And she was like, "Is this really worth it? Worth waiting in line for?" And the person behind
saw
me,
a line and got in it.
the person behind me was like, "Oh yes, absolutely. It's 100% worth waiting for." Like, as someone who had previously gone to do it. I think it definitely was. It was like a 10 to 15 minute wait for me. I think oftentimes at night games, if you are there at basically close to first pitch, it's probably a half hour easy. That might not be worth it to me, but I did think, like, for ballpark pizza, this was legitimately outstanding.
Yeah, I will accept that, given that caveat. It's really hard to judge, though, because you shouldn't judge any restaurant based upon the version of that restaurant at the ballpark.
So many people DM'd on Instagram after I posted this. How does it compare to the real version? And I had to point out that I have still not had Moto Pizza from the actual locations yet.
I want to have Moto Pizza proper. Worth it is such a complicated thing to describe, because food at a baseball game is expensive. It was not a ton of food for $19, though.
No. I mean, it was enough to tide me over. That was my full lunch.
It was good, though.
Those two slices.
It was good. It just it doesn't, like, the ballpark version of it wasn't anything that I would be like, wow, this is incredible. I don't think I would necessarily wait in a 30-minute line for that ballpark pizza, but I
did think it was competitive with the Detroit style pizza.
You had it way fresher than I had it.
That is
true. I had it
yes.
like 30 minutes after you'd gotten it, right?
Sitting underneath your seat for an extended period of time until you got there in the second inning.
Do you want to know a wild bit of information that I got today?
I mean, yes, of course.
I was driving down Petrovitsky, whatever it turns into, towards Tequila. Round Table Pizza Buffet. If you recall, you were never that much a part of this. A staple in Burien. Right?
I mean, I wouldn't say I wasn't that much a part of it. I don't like it as much as when the Pizza Hut in downtown had the lunch buffet. That was top tier.
Pizza buffets in general are incredible. Do you want to know what the Round Table Pizza Buffet in, I think it's Tequila still, is, what it costs?
No, I mean, yes, I do want to know.
$13.99.
That's a bargain.
That's not a bargain. That is the cost. That is more expensive than a full pizza.
But you're trying different things.
No, the point of, you could get 2 pizzas from Domino's for $13.99. Are you fucking kidding me? My point was how expensive the pizza buffet is. You know that you're eating cardboard pizza from Round Table. It's bad, but you get a lot of it, and it's $5.99. And you might get the salad bar too. That's the entire point of it. You think $13.99 is a steal for one person? Your whole brain is broken right now. Living in West Seattle has changed you, man. The Round Table Pizza Buffet should be like $5.99, and you eat 12 slices. That is what it's about.
Okay.
Man, it is so expensive. That's 2 pizzas at Little Caesars, 2 pizzas at Domino's.
Fair.
For $13.99, you could get like 3 or 4 slices from Pagliacci of good pizza. You could get 3 different slices.
That I agree with. Obviously, our sponsor Pagliacci.
I would much rather have that. Stay in your lane. Round Table Pizza. People must not be eating it.
Okay. I would tell you that I thought that the Moto pizza was competitive with the Detroit pizza that I ended up eating in Detroit. I will say.
Okay.
So I felt much more positive about it than I think either you or Zach felt, the ballpark version. So on Friday, meeting my ESPN colleague Jamal Collier for lunch, we went to Salerno's
Name dropping again.
Salerno's Pizza, which I thought of as tavern style. I'm now reading their website. Apparently, it is technically double dough style is what they specialize in. So it's a little thicker than the classic tavern style that has become more popular. Certainly, J. Kenji Lopez Alt has been posting a lot about his experiments with tavern style and trying various tavern style over the past year here. But so tavern style, it's supposed to be like a cracker thin crust, kind of traditional cheese and toppings, and then it's cut not in slices of a pie radiating out from the center, but in rectangles, but at the edge, they get rounded. That makes sense to you. It's like if you're making cutting lines across it. And so the inside pieces are squares, but the outside pieces are not. And the outside pieces were terrific. Thumbs up to this. The other thing I discovered is that giardiniera is a topping option for Chicago pizzas in Chicago.
Okay.
And I enjoyed that. I had sausage and giardiniera, the Mad Italian, I believe was the name of that one. So this is very solid, very solid. Sunday at the...
You know who does tavern style pizzas?
Who?
Round Table Pizza.
Oh, I guess I had never thought of that. That's interesting. Sunday at the recommendation of my buddy Dan Feldman of the Dunked On Network, went to Buddy's Pizza in Detroit near Ford Field pregame, and was kind of shocked that it wasn't more crowded than it was. Is a place that you could sit and have pizza and drink before the game. And the one downside of tailgating on Eastern time zone is you just got to watch the pregame show. There's no other games on.
Ugh, terrible. Bad time zone.
But we're able to just walk right in and immediately get a table. There we just had it was double pepperonis. There's pepperoni under the cheese.
Okay.
Then the layer of cheese, then cup pepperoni, and also the sauce on the top in Detroit style. Buddy's, I have not verified this claim, claims to have invented Detroit style pizza, the square pans, all corners, split slices, etc. And my big takeaway from this is I don't know how Detroit style pizza didn't sweep the country more quickly. I think it's it has a lot to offer, especially because ironically, Little Caesars and Domino's are both from Detroit.
Well, I think, Domino's doesn't do a Detroit style pizza.
And Little Caesars only added it recently. Like we weren't getting Detroit style pizza from Little Caesars as kids.
No, I think people thought that the country was scared of these other styles of pizzas. They compared it with the swarthy Italians. They thought that the country was not ready for it, right? Wow. And the pizza chains in general, they were coasting for a long time, right? They were just like circular pan. That's it. That's what you're getting. You're getting everything in triangles here, buddy. But I do think that pizzas in general, nationally, the different individual location styles of pizzas have now become, I think within the last decade, I would say, much more common in different parts of the country. Like 100%. There are multiple Detroit style pizza locations in Seattle now.
Yeah. And I would say like the cheese that melts against the pan is also like, because it's a corner slice again, the best part of Detroit style pizza. So there is some similarity to Windy City Pie, even though it's primarily a Chicago style. It has the edges, I think, have some similarity to Detroit style.
Well, their sister restaurant,
Breezy Town, is a little more ambiguously Midwestern. Yes, I would say. But
that's what the Huskies are about to experience. ambiguously Midwestern. Even country right there.
Windy City is not like full on deep dish. So Monday I finished off this trip by having deep dish at Pequod's, so previously I had deep dish I can't even remember whether it was at Giordano's or Luminati's, the two like leading chains, which is a statement on how nondescript that pizza was when I had it. Pequod's was very different. Apparently, what they're known for is their butter crust up against the pan of the pizza in the deep dish. And this time I had pepperoni in giardiniera as toppings, and this was probably ultimately the winner of the best pizza I had on the trip.
Really? So Pequod's is number 1 to you in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
I want to eat. I'm really actually very hungry right now, and I want to eat that pizza right this second.
That's a fair assessment.
I just, to me, the ambiguously Midwest pizza is the number one. I mean, God, I do love New York pizza though. I really like a thick crust, it's almost, I want it to be like you get a lot of bread in there and then the pizza toppings on top. That is really the best way to deliver pizza.
I mean, pizza is great, first off. Like,
yeah, pizza in
New
general.
York style's great. Chicago style's great. Detroit
really,
style's great.
Really coming out pro pizza here.
Yeah, the pro pizza agenda.
When I think about all the pizzas, I really think that I love pizza. But my best pizza experiences have definitely been in New York by far. It's not even close.
I don't feel like I've not had great pizza experiences in New York. I feel like the replacement level is super high, but I don't know if the highs are as high necessarily. So
Pequod's is the winner of so far for your ambiguous Midwestern pizza search.
Buddies and Salerno's would totally eat again, 100%. But Pequod's, I think, was the best.
And where does Moto Pizza rank within there?
Ballpark Moto Pizza, again, it's in that second tier.
Okay.
No. So there you go. With that, is it finally time for your favorite segment?
It's like the latest it's come.
Don't burn yourself. We got Mariners hot takes coming at you.
I was so mad this weekend. So mad. I had all of these takes in my head. I was going to invoke Dennis Green, Jim E. Mora with they are who we thought they were. And playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I was so mad. I was indifferent by Sunday. Because on Friday and Saturday, I treated those games against the Dodgers like playoff games. I sat down and hung on every pitch. I thought to myself, I want this team to be back in the playoffs again because of how much fun it was to watch October baseball last year. You remember the game against the Astros that went 19 innings or whatever, the playoff games against the Blue Jays, the comeback. Every game mattering so much, you can't miss an inning. Then I got some perspective because what I was looking for was right in front of my face the whole time. The Mariners are who we thought they were. A team that could compete for a wild card or the AL West, and the whole season, a slog through April, May, June, July, August, half of September, comes down to a 10-game gauntlet against the class of the AL West with one division title and most likely one wild card slot on the line between three teams. And I cannot wait to watch this baseball. The weather is getting colder. The nights are getting longer, and this is why we watch for so long, to hang on every pitch, every at-bat, every extra inning, and bullpen decision that will last for longer than a wild card round or a division series. We get a week and a half of some of the most intense baseball we'll have seen since 1995, that we don't even need to think about what's after, just each and every moment, because playoffs, you kidding me? I just want to win the next game.
Oh, love it. The Mariners did treat the series against the Dodgers like ALCS playoff games, certainly, because they lost all of them. But now, fresh off back-to-back wins against the Oakland A's, with one last game left against the A's, 11-1 on the season. And, you may say, oh, sure, what does that mean against a team that is now 46-105 on the season? But the A's did take two of three from Houston just last week. So these are not games to be taken for granted or taken lightly. And now, after the Astros lose the first two of their series in Baltimore with one left, it is Astros 84-68, Rangers 83-68, Mariners 83-68. All three teams in the AL West tied in the loss column with 12 days left in the season.
This is it,
11
right?
days.
I
don't know.
genuinely mean this take. Like, I am so excited to watch these games. I'm a little stressed about it, but every single game is going. It's not like there's going to be one game where you're like, well, that one didn't matter or whatever. Every single game is going to matter so much. And it's different than it was last year. The Mariners they clinched a little bit later, but they'd more or less clinched for quite a while.
They were on the verge of, like, as you said on past podcasts, we could do the math in the number of games they had left against the A's and the Angels at that point.
There's no magic number that we're talking about at this point. This is like, you just have to go out there and win these games against these fucking teams. And ultimately, like, what matters, what they do against other teams also matters in the opposite series. But the Mariners have this opportunity. They are playing
It is all in front of them.
And it's kind of an incredible opportunity in this time period when it is like, this is freaking baseball weather out there. You know, baseball can be hot or whatever, but like Monday night, it was when I really felt I was out in Hobart or whatever, Johnny Laser Field in Hobart for some fall baseball. And it was crisp. It was cold in the air. There was a crescent moon. It was clear. I was like, we are so back right now. You don't love fall like I love fall because you're dead on the inside, but it was fall. There was baseball happening. The Mariners are about to go on this stretch. We are back, baby.
So Fangraphs gives them now 30% chances of winning the AL West, only slightly better than chances of that than winning the wild card. Partially because, like, playing all these games against the other AL West teams, you know, either they win them and win the division or they lose them and fall out of it. Like, the middle ground scenario is relatively smaller than it probably should be at this point. The Rangers are way more likely to win the wild card, but way less likely to win the division. An interesting twist. Astros still most likely to make the playoffs by far, still even ahead of Toronto. But
this series they're having against the Orioles kind of reminds me of the Mariners playing against the Orioles and the Dodgers and the Rays. Like, the ALS teams they are a bit behind. It's about, in baseball, it's about just getting in because you have no idea what's going to happen in a playoff series. But
correct.
These three teams they are sub the real class of the AL and definitely the NL. You know, if you were to look at it power rankings wise, it's kind of like Rays, Orioles, maybe Blue Jays have been playing pretty well, Braves, Dodgers, and then the Mariners, the Rangers, and the Astros are definitely behind them. This is not an Astros team like we've seen in the past. This isn't an unstoppable team.
I don't know that I put the Blue Jays that high. Yes, they've won a lot of games lately. Their run differential of plus 66 ranks. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12th in baseball.
Okay.
Behind, among other teams, the Minnesota Twins, the Phillies, the Padres. The Padres have won 6 in a row, huh? A little too late on that one. A little too late on that one. But the Dodgers and the Rays, yes, 100%.
That 0.1 playoff odds still hanging on.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Blake Snell is dealing right now.
Oh, it's Blake Zilla. All right, let's get to the roundup, starting with the Sounders, who fell behind 1-0 in the 15th minute Saturday at FC Dallas, but managed to equalize in the 57th minute through Alex Roldan and held on for their third draw in a 4-match undefeated streak. Not a lot of shots on goal for either side, with just 1.2 combined expected goals, but the Sounders doubled Dallas's total, so actually a pretty solid performance. The best news of this one is that Christian Roldan made his first appearance since July 15th as a reserve. Great to see him cleared coming back from that second concussion of the season. The Sounders did finally drop to third in the West with LAFC's victory and now sit fourth with 1.45 points per match behind fourth place Vancouver, just ahead of Houston and Salt Lake with 1.43 points per match piece, which is why they could really use full points Wednesday at altitude against the Colorado Rapids, a team that has managed just 22 points from 27 matches, worst in the West, although still pretty competitive at home with a 2-4-7 record, have drawn the majority of their home games. Well, tougher going for OL Reign, who suffered a 2-0 loss Saturday at Portland. First half goals by Hina Sugita and Morgan Weaver did the Reign in. Reign had just 3 shots on goal, while the Thorns had 8. Probably the highlight of this game from the Reign perspective, Megan Rapinoe getting a standing ovation when she was subbed off in the 84th minute of what might be her final visit to Portland, where she, of course, played her college soccer at the University of Portland. Rapinoe's post-game quote via Sounder at Heart: "I've been trying to impress people in Portland since I was 18. So, to play college here and have so many amazing memories, even the rivalry, these are always the very best games. Even when you're on the losing end like tonight, this really sucks, but it's always really special playing here. A packed crowd. I don't think it was like all for me, but another meaningful game in a city that I love so much, that has meant so much to me, and such an important soccer city in our sport as well. I have so much love and respect for the fans here and how they show up for their teams, and I have a lot of good friends on the other team." Reign now 5th in the NWSL standings as they take this weekend off for the international break. UW men's soccer managed a 1-1 draw Thursday at number 1 Stanford, with Chris Myers answering Stanford's initial goal barely 3 minutes later. Now that deserves a wow.
Wow. Okay.
Then won 1-0 at Cal to complete the road trip to the Bay Area, back in the rankings at number 20 overall. UW men's soccer.
That Megan Rapinoe quote was kind of like the toast for Alicia Clark of quotes.
Oh no. Huskies, a non-conference weekend. They'll play at Seattle and host number 5 Portland. So another showdown there. The Pilots men's soccer doing quite well this season.
I wasn't aware the city of Portland liked soccer.
Yeah, news to you. All right, let's talk about the Husky football upcoming game. Or we'll start with the news. The bad news of last week, amidst the high of winning big at Michigan State, starting center Mateo Mele and cornerback Devon Banks both underwent season-ending surgeries. Redshirt freshman Parker Brailsford, the freshman of the week, slid over to center from guard to replace Mele, while Elijah Jackson and Thaddeus Dixon got most of the work at cornerback opposite Jabbar Muhammad. Depth definitely getting thin there for the Huskies, a spot where they had a lot of injuries last season. But Jackson had one pass interference call, but played a better game. Dixon had a really big 3rd down breakup that looked a lot like what Davon Banks had done previously when he was healthy. For this week, Asa Turner doubtful to play versus Cal, but fellow safety Kim Fabiculanen is expected back. The other kind of depth chart news from the Michigan State game: true freshman running back Tybo Rogers, who missed time during training camp due to team suspension, got his first playing time of the season and carried 15 times for a team-high 74 yards as part of the best rushing attack of the year. Dylan Johnson had a 45-yard rush and averaged 8.9 yards per carry. Well, Richard Newton also got his first carries of the season.
That was cool.
Game,
yeah,
had 29 yards on 4 carries.
The run game definitely picked it up a little bit there. Tybo was playing so well. I thought Billy Blanks was back. A monster performance by Tybo Rogers. Like,
did you see how that sits Saturday?
What?
The Tybo joke?
I thought we were all thinking it.
I had never for 1 second made that connection.
But that performance by the running backs in general, it goes to show me that the run game in the first 2 games, I don't think it was emblematic of what it's going to look like for the rest of the season. I think they just have to figure out the rotation a little bit. It's one of those things where at almost every position they were returning deep starters, and running back was the only position they hadn't quite figured out the rotation. And I feel like they do. I think Sam Adams sadly may not be part of that rotation, but if Tybo Rogers is going to be the one, if he's going to be the explosive player back there, then that's excellent.
I don't know if he falls entirely out of it. I think it was Daniel Ngata, who I don't know if he got any carries on Saturday. So he was kind of the one who did not benefit from Tybo Rogers and Richard Newton getting a chance. I think the other thing is you mentioned this in terms of like if you had taken off the jerseys, this felt more like the Tulsa game, the game against the lowly non-Power 5 non-conference opponent. Like the Huskies dominated the line of scrimmage at this game on both sides in a way that they did not in either of the first 2 games. And that was, kind of really exciting and encouraging to see. So let's talk about This week's opponent, Cal, is the Huskies start Pac-12 play. Huskies 21-point favorites in this one. Cal is 2-1 with wins over North Texas and Idaho, coming back from a 17-0 deficit to beat the Vandals 31-17 last Saturday, but lost 14-10 at home to Auburn in their only real non-conference test. It's been a run-heavy attack for Cal under Jake Spavital, who returned as offensive coordinator after spending the 2016 season in that role before becoming the offensive coordinator at West Virginia and then spending the last 4 years as the head coach at Texas State. The Bears rank 6th nationally with 242.7 rushing yards per game, but are averaging just 198.7 passing yards per game, which Michael Penix Jr. calls a good quarter. TCU transfer Sam Jackson, the fifth, won the QB battle, has started all 3 games, but completed just 54% of his attempts for 5.0 yards per attempt. Jackson does bring a rushing threat. He had 9 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown on Saturday. NC State transfer Ben Finley replaced Jackson due to injury against North Texas and threw for more yards in that game, went 24 of 34 for 289 yards than Jackson has in 2+ games.
Sam Jackson's much better at getting these motherfucking snakes off this motherfucking plane, though.
100%. Jaden Ott leads a trio of running backs with at least 150 yards so far, which contrasts with the Huskies, who have no running back with 90 yards yet this season. Despite not playing against Idaho due to an injury that shouldn't sideline him against UW, Ott ran all over North Texas for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, but had less success against Auburn with 20 carries for 78 yards. He had 897 yards, 8 touchdowns as a true freshman last year. Their leading receiver is Jeremiah Hunter, who has 147 yards and 2 touchdowns after nearly hitting 1,000 yards in 2022. Cal defense remains stout as ever under Justin Wilcox. They're 17th in FPI efficiency after finishing a disappointing 56th last year, have forced 10 turnovers through 3 games. And while the schedule was obviously a factor in that, they held Michigan State transfer Peyton Thorne to 94 yards on 14 attempts in the Auburn game, while forcing 4 turnovers in that one. Cal managed to slow the Huskies in the first 3 quarters of their 28-21 loss last year in Berkeley. Bears had a 7-6 lead at one point, or even 14-14 heading to the 4th. But UW scored touchdowns on 3 consecutive drives in the late 3rd and 4th.
I kind of don't even remember that game.
I do. I remember it. I don't know what the burger was, but I went and got a burger from Little Woody's and was watching the first half of this at Beer Star and being frustrated with UW's offense. And I think it felt worse in the moment than it really was going back and looking at the stats for Michael Penix Jr. But it did take, they did take away the big plays that have been the signature of the Penix, Ryan Grubb, Kalen DeBoer era Huskies.
Do we sort of kind of just like grind it out? I think I kind of remember
a lot of long drives. They had a couple of opportunities. They had multiple drives down 1 touchdown late in the game, but could not come up with the tying touchdown.
I think if there's anybody who is going to slow down this UW offense, I think it's Justin Wilcox of anybody who they'll face. So wouldn't be surprised to see them be a little bit less explosive than they were. I would be shocked if this is a situation that they end up at the 1-yard line and just casually pick up 40 yards. So they'll probably have to work for it a little bit more. Similar to you saw like Belichick against the Dolphins last week. Eventually they got there. They got their yardage. They got their points eventually, but they had to work a lot harder for it than they did against other opponents. And I think that's how this one is going to look. Ultimately, UW's just a better team, and they're playing the game at home. They're a better team. The offense is better than Cal's defense is. And I think UW's defense is good enough. You talk about these stats.
It's better than Cal's offense. Yes. Cal should not score many points in this game.
When you talk about these stats early in the season, when ultimately, yes, they probably still will be a run-heavy team. They've played against Idaho and North Texas. There's just not enough of a body of work to even necessarily understand exactly what this is going to look like. And they haven't been.
But they also the pass offense also played against North Texas and Idaho, and again, other than when Finley was in there, they have not been successful passing the ball. So, I don't think that's super encouraging for them going against this UW defense, whose one weakness is probably the corner opposite Jabbar Muhammad.
The thing that we need to be doing is looking at the weather forecast, though, because the 7:30 start against Cal is not something that I like to see. Better make sure there's no wind in the forecast and no lightning.
Yeah, the lightning is the real concern here. I've already had one late night this week. I don't need a second. Saturday's looking pretty good. 67 degrees, mostly cloudy. We'll need the hoodie for this one, certainly, but that should be comfortable.
Okay. All right. This is the first fall football game of the year.
Oh, yeah. As it usually is. Percentage chance 76 on Friday. So we'll see if that forecast changes at all. Percentage chances of victory, obviously not. We're not have to worry about getting sunburned in the 7:30 start.
I think it's like an 80% chance of victory.
That low?
I don't know, 85.
FBI has 84%, and I feel like that's underselling it. I think
I have
90.
a healthy amount of fear of Cal, and of Cal in general as a program. Also, the first Pac-12 game. It's a 7:30 start. This is the last year of Pac-12 After Dark, at least UW's participation in Pac-12 After Dark. You just never know. I'm just throwing that out there. You have to have some healthy skepticism.
I mean, this would probably be the third time out of 4 weeks that I would definitely advise taking the points against the Huskies, but I've been way wrong in the first two of those. Yes. So maybe not. I'm at 90%. So,
all right.
The Seahawks heading home also to take on the Carolina Panthers, who come in at 0-2. And big news, I think, likely the likely return of Jamal Adams, who could play for the first time since week 1 in 2022. Wow. And look, I know there's a lot of skepticism about Jamal Adams' value. I share it to a degree, although certainly not to the extent that some Seahawks fans do. But also, like, what exactly are you worried about Jamal Adams messing up here on a defense that's 26th in opponent EPA, 30th in dropback EPA thus far?
Are people worried about him messing something up?
I think people are always like, oh, the Seahawks are better off without Jamal Adams.
I definitely do not think the Seahawks are better off without Jamal Adams. I strongly do not feel that.
I think what's going to be really interesting, as we talked about with Ben Baldwin in the season preview, is how do they use Julian Love once Adams returns? I mean, maybe they split some time in this first week that Adams is back. But one thing we saw with Devin Witherspoon, well, obviously wasn't coming off nearly as serious an injury, but wasn't as experienced, is they just threw him in the deep end right away. I expected he would play nickel, to start instead, or maybe
the recall on injury as well.
Yeah, but he was starting at left corner before that. Or maybe they would play him at left corner in base defense and then move him inside as part of nickel defenses and put Trey Brown on the field that way. Instead, Witherspoon I think he played every snap in the game. So
did he?
I don't remember him coming out.
They definitely, I loved how they approached it. They drafted him with the 5th pick in the draft, and they were like, we're going to play him.
Yeah.
They didn't spend the 5th pick of the draft on a player to not play them in their rookie season. So I appreciate that. That's the way they approached it, to be honest.
There were a couple of tough moments, a pass interference on him that Pete Carroll disputed, but he also came up with some really big plays in this one. I mean, it's interesting how they'll handle it, because then Trey Brown comes in and has a crucial sack in this game, the first sack of this game, and then the pick 6. So, he's someone who merits being on the field. And now, I think Julian Love in nickel or dime packages is a consideration, depending on how much he's playing at safety. You still have Kobe Bryant. You have Artie Burns, who was signed to the active is going to be signed to the active roster. I don't know if that transaction is official yet, but gives the Seahawks a little more depth at cornerback, with Reek Woolen dealing with that injury that forced him to miss the final 2.5 quarters of this game. So a lot of moving parts on defense, but a lot more parts than they had a couple of weeks ago back in week 1.
Yeah.
Devin Witherspoon did play 100% of snaps.
Wow. I love that. No, I'm so hyped on this. Devin Witherspoon, that shows me that they think Devin Witherspoon, they obviously didn't go into the draft, but from what they've seen from him so far, actually being on the team, they still have that faith in him.
You know who else played 100% of snaps, which is maybe a little more troubling long term?
Who's that?
Bobby Wagner.
I mean,
like Pete Carroll said after week 1, we need to get a snap count down. And I think he played like 90% of snaps in week 1. And then instead it was just like, oh no, actually he's going to go all the way up to 100% with Devin Bush missing last
when
week's
Devin
game.
Bush is out. Yeah. I mean,
I
they'll
guess
be able to spell
he
him
did
a
play
little bit.
every snap in week 1 as well.
At some point you just get down to it where it's like he's Bobby Wagner. Like if Bobby,
so much more than anyone else.
If he's feeling good and wants to be on the field, that every single drive mattered in both of those games. There wasn't a situation where they're like, this is not where we could take a drive off. Throttle down a little bit here. I mean, the hope is that this does happen against Carolina now.
Yeah. By the way, this reminds me, you mentioned the Huskies throttling down and used that phrase a couple of times. Like they were substituting substantially, even in the first half of that Michigan State game on defense. Maybe not as much at the receiver position, but they have really gotten a lot of guys work in the first few weeks of the season, which is encouraging.
Yes. No, I feel like that's kind of the new thing with this Husky defense is how many different players are playing.
All right, but let's get back to the Seahawks and talk about the Panthers.
I'm hyped on Devin. Devin Witherspoon's going to make a play in this game.
Okay. Going up against the number 1 pick of this year's draft in Bryce Young, who has led the Panthers to 27 total points in 2 games, which ranks 30th in the NFL. I mean, it's interesting because like this is not the empty cupboard situation that a lot of number 1 picks come into. The Panthers finished 7-10 last year. They were 6-6 under interim coach Steve Wilkes, including a 32-24 win in Seattle in week 14 with Sam Darnold as quarterback. And yet, 0-4 against the NFC South. And yet Young is number 28, both in overall EPA and drop back, or the Panthers offense, I should say, is number 28, both overall and in terms of drop back EPA. Young rates a little better in terms of completion percentage over expected, which has been fairly average, but is averaging a league low 7.1 yards per completion. Intended air yards haven't been that low, but haven't been able to hit the big plays. Just 1 completion in 2 games of more than 15 yards.
Yikes. Okay.
Newcomer Adam Thielen has been the most reliable target thus far with 9 catches for 66 yards, including 7 on Monday night against the Saints. And Frank Reich said Tuesday he wants to get Laviska Shenault Jr. more involved. Shenault has just 2 targets through the first 2 games. Actually has more rushing attempts so far with 3 of those. I'd say the biggest surprise to me is that the run game has been ineffective. After staying fairly strong last season following the Christian McCaffrey trade, they were 8th overall in rush EPA last year, 12th without McCaffrey. They are 27th so far. They're 5th in success rate, so a lot of that is 3 fumbles, 2 of them lost. But new starter Miles Sanders is averaging just 3.6 yards per carry, while Chuba Hubbard, who averaged 4.9 yards per carry last year, is up to 6.9 on his 11 carries this season.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things you mentioned that Bryce Young is not coming into an empty cupboard situation like most number 1 picks. This is a completely different Panthers team.
It's really true. And part of what they had to pay to get, Bryce Young with the number 1 pick was DJ Moore, who was a really important part of their receiving game.
So I just don't really think it's necessarily comparable to this is still a rebuilding team. They obviously signed Adam Thielen to have veteran presence at receiver, but this is a rebuild season, whether they realize it or not. And Bryce Young, I was only able to watch a couple of possessions in that game. There was at least 1 or 2 balls that he threw where I was like, wow, that is an awful throw. And then ultimately, it was kind of a lot of underneath stuff, dumping plays off, getting the ball to Adam Thielen a lot, and definitely trying to get the ball to Adam Thielen a lot. We've played a couple of quarterbacks who are Seahawk killer type quarterbacks in back-to-back weeks in Stafford and Goff. Bryce Young, I do not think is that player.
I mean, the Seahawks have historically feasted on rookie quarterbacks. I think it's, that's the inverse of those veteran quarterbacks who sit and pick them apart. Young, his sacks also a big issue. He's been sacked 6 times through 2 games already. So it would be nice to see the pass rush really, get going in this one after not making a lot of impact against Jared Goff in the first 2.5 quarters, maybe 3 quarters. I forget when it was. I guess it was in the 4th when Trey Brown had the first sack. And then they started to get to him a little bit.
He did end up with...
Unfortunately, one time Darrell Taylor got to Jared Goff, but Jared Goff had handed the football
He got there.
It really was a truly shocking play. Because, like, the fact that he celebrated, like, it wasn't a dirty play at all.
He
It
just had no
legitimately was
idea.
fooled, which it's kind of surprising. Like, I'd never seen it before, but it's kind of surprising it doesn't happen more often.
The Uchenna Nwosu doing the crying at the Lions after. It was a tense game. It really was.
I feel like this could be a fun rivalry. It is kind of funny. The one thing, like, they mentioned one time during the game that, like, Seahawks fans had funded a flag football league that the Lions started this season.
Yeah, no, we were
donations.
Lions fans. The last time that the Seahawks played a regular season game, or that the Lions played a regular season game before this year, we were Lions fans.
Lifelong
in that
Lions
moment.
fans. But now
So
it feels like this could be a real rivalry.
From that grew a very deep hate. I mean, the other piece.
I mean, you know what? The Seahawks and Lions are just on each other's corner right now.
A little bit, just with less forced downs.
Not necessarily from that part of it, but in terms of teams that, you know, are, I don't know if, you know, I necessarily sound to say young, but like had surprising seasons in 2022 and added a shit ton of draft picks early in the 2023 draft to go with that. One of those
much
teams,
better offenses than
one of those teams used a higher pick on the running back than the other did.
Yes. I mean, the other piece is that it could be a huge deal as far as playoffs as well. I mean, the reason they obviously made the playoffs last year is because of that victory in Detroit. So it was a big win. This one against Carolina, though, I just don't. It's a little bit too early for Bryce Young.
We still got to talk about the Panthers defense, which I was kind of surprised it's only 16th dead average in overall EPA per play, number 10 against dropbacks, number 28 against the rush, because it feels like they've kept them in the games. They obviously got run over by Bijan Robinson in week 1, and then really contained Derek Carr, who went 21 of 36 for 228 yards. But Taysom Hill gashed them for 75 yards on 9 carries. Seahawks have been there. Shaq Thompson suffered a fibula fracture on Monday night, underwent surgery. It sounds like it's likely to be season ending. People who know are very high on the Panthers. Other off-ball linebacker, Frankie Louvu, who had 7 sacks last year, has 2.5 through the first 2 games.
Wow.
Edge Brian Burns also has a pair of sacks. And the Panthers are 3rd best in the NFL overall with sacks on 13% of opponent dropbacks.
I mean, that defense last year was good.
Yeah.
But between them and the run game last year, it just the scoring points is the part that I think is going to be difficult. And we'll see where the Seahawks offense is at against a team like this. I think it's a little bit of the Panthers is not necessarily a barometer game. We're feeling out how much of it is the Rams are better than we thought they were. And I think that Rams team, I mean, even the Niners game, like everything that happened last weekend kind of pointed toward the Seahawks not being as bad as we thought they were.
Certainly Puka Nacua appears to be for real and not just taking advantage of the Seahawks defense.
It is shocking how good Puka Nacua is.
I mean, historic first 2 games in the NFL. Puka Nacua. Who knows?
When it feels real too. It's one of those things where he's just open all the time.
And he's doing this without the attention of Cooper Kupp on the other side. So it'll be very fascinating when they put the 2 of those guys together. Frankly, he has been what we thought Jackson Smith and Jigba would be in the NFL thus far. And thus far, the Seahawks have not really figured out how to unlock Smith and Jigba. A lot of short passes to him thus far. Although I think there was one big 3rd down conversion that he had.
He'll get there. I mean, there's still so many just with the other receivers on the team. Like, there's still so much attention that's going to go to. We talked about this a lot. We get so excited about rookies, but like DK Metcalf's going to get a lot of passes. Tyler Lockett's going to get a lot of passes.
I mean, look, we talked about Geno. DK had an awesome game on Sunday. Tyler Lockett had an awesome game on Sunday. Like, they both gave
huge
him
bounce
a
back
lot
for
of help.
both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After week 1, I was making the case that the offense was probably fine and it was just 3rd downs. And I feel like what happened on Sunday validated that position. And validated very quickly, right from the opening drive as they marched down the field. So, but yeah, for this one, it feels like unless the Seahawks have a Rams second half style offensive, slow down, let's say, it will be hard for the
They gained
Panthers.
12 yards. What is the other word? You didn't want to say meltdown because
Yeah. Well, meltdown sounded too hot. They need to be colder. The term.
we were pretty hot that day.
Is that referring to the temperature or your anger?
Yeah, at both. I've let it go.
Percentage chances of victory?
60, 70, 68.
We go 70%. This is a game they should win. And, it would be a bit of a concern with the schedule in the back half if they didn't win this one, having already dropped one to the Rams. But it certainly wouldn't be. Stranger things have happened. They went 0-4 against the NFC South last year.
It's one of those things. They're 5.5-point favorites, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Seahawks won the game by 20 plus points.
Yeah,
but the Panthers stayed obviously very close with the Saints, who I think are maybe good. I'm still a little bit less convinced that the Saints are good, but
I mean, the other thing about this one is I feel like it's got a chance to really, what happens early could cause wide deviations late. Because if the Panthers are in situations where they need to become one-dimensional and throw the ball on every down, it could get ugly.
Yes, I agree.
And on the other hand, if the Seahawks are leading and can take the Panthers pass rush out of it, then that could really work there. The other thing I didn't say about the game plan on Sunday, like I think we were wrong that they didn't actually use any play action in week 1. I think that was a bad stat that I found in the moment. But they sure corrected that one. It felt like they made the entire offense out of play action against the Lions. And guess what? Play action is great.
Yeah.
So keep it up, Shane Waldron.
Wow, how different these weeks are. Last week I gave a take about how much I hated Shane Waldron. It was personal. And here we are a week later, happy with the Seahawks.
Life comes at you fast.
Every game can be an indictment on a team, though, in the NFL. There's not that many of them. It's not baseball.
I agree that is, even though it is not correct, it is more sensible and more correct to do so in the NFL. 10 times more so because there's 1/10 as many games.
Yeah.
On that note,
thanks for listening.
Thanks.
I feel like I'm the tired one. I'm so tired.
I'm pretty tired. I'm not yawning as much.
I just it's kind of cold down here now.
Yeah, it's that season.
Break out my heater. Spiders are everywhere. I don't know if you have spiders all over the place.
Yeah, I do.
I've been having giant spiders. Is Socks feasting? Do Socks eat spiders? No.
You might try sometimes, but not really. Maybe every once in a while.
Taste. Have a little taste of a spider.
Just a little spider as a treat.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.